enough or more than enough for a quorum?
Yes, we are good to go.
You're good to go. Okay, then we are at 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And I think everybody knows each other unless somebody sees somebody new on here. So the first order of business would be the approval of the agenda. Did anybody have any changes they'd like to see to the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion on the agenda? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Is there any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. Then up next, we'd have the approval of the meeting minutes. This is from the minutes of March 24th, 2021.
I'd move approval.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Alan and a second by
Andy.
Andrew Hamilton. And any further discussion on those minutes? Then all those in favor say aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Minutes are approved. Up next, check in with Rachel. This is the opportunity for public comment. Do we have anybody online joining us today, Rachel?
There is nothing in the chat.
Okay. Then we will keep chugging right along. See item 5 on the agenda, payables. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Any questions for staff? There are none. I'd entertain a motion when you're ready.
Motion to approve the payables as presented. Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Chet, second from Alan to approve the payables as presented. Any further discussion on the payables? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Is there any other-
Mr. Chairman, a quick question. I did see on their Clark County auditor lease, $8,217. Does that have something to do with the agreement with Cressa, or can I be enlightened on what that's about?
Dave, can you help us out on that? Deanna, Dave, or Rachel maybe?
Rachel.
Sorry, those are payments for leases for our radio tower sites.
Okay, thank you.
Then I'll finish that off. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Is there any opposed? Payables are approved. Then item 6, financial report.
That's going to be presented at the second meeting of the
Oh,
month.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I missed that.
No worries.
Second meeting. Okay, item 7 then, moving on. Board comments and or board committee reports. If there's no general board comments, look to any LawTac update.
No update since our last meeting. Our next one is on May 11th.
Okay, thank you, Troy. How about on the fire side? Any updates from the fire TAC?
No update on the fire side. Our next meeting is the second Monday in May.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So Joe, hold on a second. So Brandon, I guess a question for you, because that's not the response I got back from my representative. So at the last meeting, there was discussion about the building of run cards and some concern in building those run cards, as well as the fact that there was concern about the long-term maintenance of the Spielman product? And
I'm not aware of any of that.
okay.
Okay,
Vic, do you have any more details?
Well, what I got back from my representative, Jared Casey, was the fact that there was discussion in regards to that the question of long-term support has not been answered, and it's a concern. And the fact that the run card discussion of building them, that there was some concern that there was going to be some functionalities that weren't going to work, or there was question about whether they were going to work or how they were going to work.
Vic, I wasn't at the last Spielman meeting. That might have been something that they discussed there. I'm sorry, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. So again, that's what came back from my representative that's on that committee. And I think, Jerry, you were there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know that there's was any specific discussion of concerns over components that will or won't work in Spielman. I think that at this point, there's just a lot of unknowns. There's many things that I don't know yet about Spielman and how it addresses or works with run cards. So I think that it would be fair to say that there are some unknowns going in, but I think that everybody's had a pretty solid chance to see Spielman and to ask questions and those kinds of things. So while yes, there's some unknowns going in, I don't know that there's any cause for alarm necessarily at this stage. Then as far as long-term support for run cards, I would say that that's still a topic for discussion. How are they going to be maintained? Is that going to be responsibility of individual agencies? Is that going to be something that will be continued to maintain by the comm center? There's a fair amount of work involved, and the amount of work involved to some degree will be dictated by how much you want to do with your run cards. Some agencies are pretty static and really don't have a lot of changes, and will be almost no maintenance on anyone's part to keep those up. Others are pretty active in wanting and requesting changes with some pretty brisk regularity. So again, it is something that we need to decide at some point who's going to be doing the work and what does that look like. But I think at this stage, it's still pretty unknown what that's going to look like, and still will be shaken out as we move deeper into the project, if that makes some sense. I know it's a lot of probably double talk and really doesn't answer your questions. I would just say that at this point, there's a lot that we don't know, and just things to keep an eye on as we continue to march forward.
And I guess, Joe, that's my whole point is that we shouldn't repeat history, right?
Sure.
When we had PCR, we had in-house support. Andy was there and was doing all that work. When we went to Intergraph, we really didn't have any in-house support, and that created issues as time went on. And then we married up with Clark County and cleaned some stuff up. I know the question was posed early on when we were saying we were going to Spielman is how are we going to handle the long-term maintenance? Because if we don't have a plan, we're going to end up in the same position that we are with Intergraph currently. And that question hasn't been answered, and I think it is significant. And it's significant in multiple ways to ensure that the system is supported and runs to the benefit of its users. And the second part being is what potentially is the financial impact? Is the financial impact for that support coming from the 911 center, and does that impact user fees? is the financial impact where users are paying the same price, but they're picking up staff time in order to support, functions of the system? How does this flush out? What does it look like? And I think it's important that we answer that question sooner than later.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. I know that, what we ended up with, I think it's fair to say that we, as an agency, didn't throw enough support at CAD and some of the responsibility of where we're at and that things are behind the curve are as a result of that. I know that I'm taxed. There's not a lot more that I can take on. And so that will potentially mean that needs to be part of the discussion, I think, is what does that look like? Who's going to do what? What are the roles going to be? Is that going to be another staff position, or what is the expectation of the board? What do we want to see? Where do we want to go with it? And it is a big decision, and I think you're right, Vic. I think that it's important that we get it right. We have the opportunity and the time to do it. So this is the time to have those discussions.
So yeah, let's say, I hear what you're saying, Vic. So how do we assure that we get these answers and make sure we're comfortable with what we're expecting to get, and knowing regarding especially the long-term support? I think that's important stuff that we should get ironed out sooner than later. So how do we, I guess I'm just posing the question, how do we make sure that happens? Does that happen through the law and fire TAC groups, and they let us know that they feel comfortable, and as well as through Dave and Deanna and Jerry? I mean, I'm just trying to feel out how we get those questions answered and how we hear back that they have been answered to satisfaction.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it's up to us, the board, to set the direction of how it's going to be supported, because there's going to be a financial component to it. And I don't remember, Troy, somewhere along the line, and I don't remember if it was in your original, proposal, somewhere along the line, somebody had called out the FTE or some component of an FTE with a cost associated to it. That rings a bell to me someplace. And I don't know if that was in Troy's original proposal of what it would take or where that came from.
That would have been Phil's write-up when he did a cost assessment. If I can have a minute, there's a couple different types of service that we're looking at. One is we have Tom Stoddard. Tom, we contract with for service on the Spillman system. He is able to work all sorts of IT magic for our needs. And then 911, you guys are having IT support this time. That was another big problem that we had going through Cressa. It was just a lot of times we felt like our needs were not being taken care of as far as fixing any issues that we were having with the Intergraph. I think, Vic, not just the financial component, and I think a lot of these things are actually going into place, but what we'll need is the roadmap of who to contact for which issues. And that's often at the user end, that's the confusing thing, is like which issue is going to be for 911's IT to take a crack at, which issues do we call Tom Stoddard for. That'll be the stuff I think we need to iron out when we go forward.
And that might be the answer right there, is the fact that Joe, those components might be in place, but I think Troy hit that kind of on the head. If those components are in place, we need to have them identified for all, and then which one do you go to? So.
Yeah, that's good to know. Sorry, who was that? Go ahead.
Deanna.
Go ahead, Deanna.
So I just want to throw something out there. I had a little brief conversation with the sheriff just right before this as well, and this kind of came up. The consulting team, as part of our scope of work with them, the first thing that they came in to do was discovery, to kind of look at where we're at now with our systems and processes and, you know, where we want to go in the future. We kind of wrapped that up last week, and they will be prepared to do a short presentation for the discovery and then transitioning into the design phase for the new facility, which includes all of our technology. And Vic, you're 100% right. We have to have a plan in place that says this is how we're going to support all of this. In that discovery phase, there are some things that have come up, which our Spillman group is separate than our relocation consulting group, the CRP team. But we're working together on a lot of those projects. So in the Spillman group, we did identify a policy group. And so there are some items that we really feel are policy decisions that we want to put together some recommendations and bring those to the board because they have monetary attachments or, you know, ongoing costs to support those. And yeah, IT support is one of those things. We do have Tom Stoddard as part of this contract with Spillman through the implementation phase. And I know that the law users and records currently contract with him now. So that's an option moving forward. There are other technologies that we'll need to support. So we are definitely going to have a need for internal IT support at the new facility. You're going to have a phone system in there, your business phone system. You've got all of your CAD equipment. You've got network stuff. You've got switches. Some questions have come up on the ASA switches, which are your firewalls that your agencies or municipalities connect to our public safety network, and those all need to be replaced. The county supported that in the past, and I've recommended that our consulting team price that out as well for the comm center to do the replacement to the DMARC. What you do at your facility to connect to that, if you don't have IT folks that, you know, can help you kind of graph that out, we can include that with the consulting team that we've put together. I mean, there's decisions like, do we maintain two connections for the data transport for your mobile clients? Currently, Longview uses NetMotion. Everybody else uses radio IP. The comm center right now maintains the radio IP, supports that. The NetMotion is supported by the city of Longview. We've had some discussions about maybe we move to one platform, and if we do, who's going to pay for that? So those are kind of some of the recommendations I think that these committees can bring to the board as a package. And then we figure out who's going to pay for it or how we're going to pay for it or how many FTEs we're going to need in the comm center to support that. Does that help?
I think it's all good information. I just think we need to make sure that we keep it at the forefront so that we're ahead of the game and we don't, you know, we don't go live and then we're sitting there saying, oh, what are we going to do now?
Yeah, I agree.
Again, just trying not to repeat history.
Agreed.
So is there a way, it sounds like maybe in the effort to keep this in the forefront, could we get just a regular update on those efforts back to the board? Maybe that's not every meeting, but once a month?
How about once a month?
Okay.
Okay.
Would that be helpful, Vic?
Sure.
I just like to say, going back to, I know discussions with Phil, and I think he's talked about it at the board level, kind of the comparison between having in-house employees versus contracting out. So hopefully we could have several different proposals of what the future would look like, whether you do want in-house people or contract basis.
Yeah, and when that was mentioned, Sheriff, I recall the document that I think Phil had showed us. It did provide some options there. So maybe we could dig that back up, and might be a good starting point, at least understanding what some options might be, but that's a good idea. Okay, anything else on that before we move on? All right, then we will move right along to our director's report, and I'll turn it over to Dave.
All right. So on staffing, we had a dispatcher relocate since the last report. We're now down to 17 dispatchers plus 3 trainees. And we're waiting on the fingerprint results still on 1 more trainee, hopefully within the week or so. We're reviewing right now the applicant pool that we just got to see if we can accommodate a new dispatcher academy. That's a different way of putting the dispatchers through, and hopefully we'll, instead of nickel and diming it to death, we'll be able to get this place up to full staffing with a dispatcher academy. I'll report back to you about that as the progress goes on that applicant pool. Any question about staffing right at the moment? And one side thing about the staffing is that we are coming into the part of the year where everybody, where we do have higher vacation levels and the call levels go up. So it is imperative to get these dispatchers online and trained up so that we can continue to keep the service at or above the 95% that we've set as an internal goal. All right, moving on to the facility. Patriot continues to report that the construction is on schedule, and we review this with an owner architect contractor Zoom meeting and a follow-up as an on-site visit with me and Norm. So that happens every single week. This past week, we did have a transient issue that caused some minor damage overnight. The minor damage being a small fire and taking of some electricity. A sawhorse was broken up and set on fire. And then it looks like these transients had charged their cell phone off the electricity outlet that's out there. They left their charger at the site. We've canvassed the area to get their help in calling in transient activity, and we've notified the local police and sheriff entities about overnight watching the facility. Any questions on the new facility? All right, and then just going out of order on the analytics for the past month, it was at 95.51%. Our internal goal is to be at 95% within with a 10-second answering time, and our average answering time last month was 4.7 seconds. Any question on analytics? All right, moving to radios. This is where we've had some really huge issues in the last 3 weeks. We had 2 complete system-wide outages on 3/28 and 3/31. Day Wireless took measures to ensure the system would not lock up in the future, and that we could transmit on the backup radios. Those issues were stabilized after the 2 outages. On Easter, the system appeared to start showing signs that it might go down again. Day Wireless came in and moved some components around. The system's been working since then. I know that that's a huge issue. Day Wireless has been working on this thing every time the system goes down, and we're working on an aging system, and the microwave is where we are waiting to replace that microwave. So that's the ultimate fix in this whole thing, is to get to replace that microwave.
So the system outages and were microwave issues?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Scott Neves. I just had a question. What's the redundancy or the backup plan, and was it implemented? And if not, what happened?
I sent out an email report to everybody that the backup or the dispatchers that were here made contact with all the agencies by phone. And so the backup systems worked to temporarily be able to communicate. And right now we are working off the backup system. Deanna, do you have any other things that I could talk about with that?
Just to explain a little bit about what happened is we had our primary path from the Hall of Justice to Rainier microwave, and then there's also a backup to that. And the microwave, because it's failing, it would bounce. So it would go kind of up and down, which made the backup say, oh, I need to take over. So they were fighting with each other. And that's what created the outage. So once they just went to the backup and shut the primary piece off, they're not fighting with each other anymore. So it has maintained or been stable since they made that change to it. We do have the parts in now. We're waiting on radio parts, and they arrived yesterday. And I believe the 19th, 4/19 is the timeline, unless something comes up that messes with that the replacement should take place. So I think that's next week.
And to close the loop on the rest of that question, the 911 system was still in play. We still could take radio calls, and we still could create the radio calls and dispatch them through the MDTs. So I hope that answers the questions.
So are we,
Thank you.
are we current at this time 100% running off of the backup then, or we are?
Yeah.
So we don't have a backup to that at the moment. We're waiting for a replacement.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it is the reason for the backup. So
Yep.
It's a good thing we have redundancy.
Is the backup of the same vintage?
Yeah.
Remember, it is.
And they're both being replaced at this, well, they'll replace one side of it, fire that up, replace the other side of it, and that will be the backup in place. But that will all be new equipment. And we have a plan to start replacing all the other microwaves countywide as well. So we have other links from Rainier to Davis, Rainier to Signal Peak, Speley, and all of those microwave systems need to be replaced.
You probably said this and I just missed it, Deanna, so I'm sorry, but the timeline on those replacements showing up?
I actually don't have a timeline. We really need to do an RFP on that because it's a pretty big project. So in between all of my other projects, it is a priority to me, but I can't give you one yet.
Okay.
The primary link that's missing, or that we've been waiting on, that part arrived, and so the 19th is projected date for the Hall of Justice Rainier link. That's the most critical part, and the part that's immediately failing. So that's been received. It was received yesterday, and the 19th is projected date for that component. The other components that Deanna's talking about, those have yet to be scheduled and have a specific timeline.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
But we will prioritize that.
Yep.
Moving on to the Kalama radio project, since the last meeting, the antenna and the racks have been installed. And now they expect to test it on or around April 28th after they work on the programming and the radio interface. And I've personally met with the chief out in Kalama to talk with him about that, and we will stay on top of Day Wireless to get that project done.
And Dave, thank you for that. And Deanna, there's a secondary backup, right? If I have that connection, everybody, including AMR, except for Cowlitz 2, would be able would not lose connection if the microwave link goes down.
Vic, your audio is really, really low, but what I think you asked is if the connection went down, would there be radio coverage?
No. Is that better?
A little.
No, what I was saying was that I was thanking Dave and you for the work on this, and that it's actually a secondary backup for us, because AMR, Longview, Tootle, District 1, District 5, if we lost the microwave link, we still actually have communications with the 911 center.
Got it. We are trying. It is a priority, I promise you.
Thank you.
And I've personally met with Day Wireless twice, and they're keeping a running sheet or an update for me to make sure that they're continually working on that project. One other thing that happened in the last 3 weeks is that our Davis site had a generator problem that Day Wireless had to deal with, and it ended up being a fuel pump that had to be replaced. And lastly, as far as updates from what's going on right at the moment, the officials in Woodland have indicated that the preferred site that we've got is not going to work for them. So our search over in Woodland continues. And I'll be down there talking with the chief and the city officials to see what other options we can get down there in Woodland.
Do we have any update on the Castle Rock site?
The Castle Rock High School, we're waiting on US Cellular, so we've submitted a PO for the assessments that need to be done for the site in order to put equipment on it. And we're just waiting for them to process it through their corporate office. I've got Ken from Dave following up with Wayne at US Cellular today. He hadn't heard from him, and the last we heard was that we should have approval this week.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be the radio update.
I do have one other thing, the Baker's Corner site. The permits, hopefully I got all 50 pages of paperwork that they needed has been submitted to the city, and the permit application fees were paid. Tentatively, there may be a public hearing on the 11th, which will be a Zoom call, and Adam will keep me posted on that.
Okay. Thank you, Deanna, for that update. Let's see. Anything else, Dave?
No, that's going to be the end of our radio report.
All right. How about moving on to old business? Does anybody have anything under old business? Okay. Is there any need for executive session today? All right. Anything for the good of the order before we pull the plug here?
Just add a couple things I wanted to bring up. One, we're kind of coming into budget season here pretty quick. And I know I talked to Joe a few weeks ago about perhaps maybe forming a budget committee to maybe look at the budgeting formula that we use for the user fees. And in light of looks like the new 911 center pretty much have a handle on the fixed costs of that, and the Spillman CAD transition, maybe look at the budget and look at some long range options for hopefully maybe reducing user fees. I know that's come up in my discussions with some of the chiefs of police and their administrators in terms of we can realize some more long-term savings in that regard. And kind of goes hand in hand with that is on our Spillman side of things, since 911 is joining law enforcement records in the jail in this common Spillman system. Talked with the chiefs and hope to move ahead and propose a new interlocal agreement involving the Spillman system. The sheriff's office is a host agency for Spillman for both the law record side and the 911 center side. And as we've discussed, it needs to be one system. And hopefully can reach an agreement to have an interlocal agreement on how we're going to fund the various components of that. In terms of one is like we talked about the IT support with having a system administrator, also the various hardware purchases that need to be made and a commitment to that. So that's something I'm going to work on and move forward with, and we'll be bringing hopefully the board and engage the board in that process and discussion on both those things. They're both budgetary impacts. So I guess I'd propose maybe to Joe, if I know we could form a budget subcommittee or something to start looking at that ahead of budget season. That I know for the counties coming up here, starting in August, we have to have a draft budget in, and I'm sure probably some of the cities are on the same cycle as well.
Yeah, I guess I would look to I don't have any issue with that, a subcommittee being formed. There's input from other board members or questions on that.
This is Scott Neves. One of the issues that I know that we've talked about before to kind of segue with Sheriff Thurman is the discussion of the comm center owning portable radios, MDTs countywide. I know that has a huge budgetary impact for our agency, and if we're going to move that direction, it has a lot of implications for the agencies. So I'd like to have that part of that discussion.
Okay, so Chief, you're talking about the comm center owning the radio equipment on your end?
Correct. I believe that's what Cressa does, and we talked about that model a while ago at the board level, and I believe that was the intent of the board members for us to move forward with that. If that's still the plan, it's going to have huge implications to all the agencies, especially when it comes to budgeting. Specifically our own, we're reaching the end of life for our portable radios, and if we are going to purchase them internally, but then just turn around and have to work something out with the comm center, I don't think that's fiscally responsible.
Okay. So I'm guessing that would be a topic this when we form this budget committee, that'd be something they could work on and have some discussions about, bring that back to the full board. Brad, were you looking for the formation of that committee, a decision today, or what are your thoughts?
Well, at least I wanted to put it on the table. Maybe it's something to give some thought to, or have a proposal for the next meeting to maybe people give them a chance to weigh in, or may contact you to express interest.
Okay. So we'll just take that as informational for this meeting and have it ready for next meeting. We can discuss and maybe have some recommendation on a committee at that time. So if you're interested in being on a budget committee, if you've got some spare time on your hands and really like numbers, reach out to maybe Dave or the sheriff or myself and express your interest, so we have some names in the hat for the next meeting. Okay, anything else on kind of what the sheriff has brought up here? Okay, not hearing anything else. Anything else for the good of the order before we call it good? All right, if not, everybody have a great rest of your day. We'll adjourn.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thanks. See you guys later.